Yeah, The Eye of the Tiger is playing. So this book, second one in this series of John, I think I read all the ones for the Old Man War, and I would read them again. There's some similarities between this and the Foundation series, for example, but also, the rise and fall of the Roman Empire, today's modern world. Let's say how the three concepts of worldviews, scientific sometimes could be related to democracy in the sense of statistics. But it only works with education, right? You got to educate people properly to make a decision. And of course, democracy doesn't work well if you enter the magical paradigms and the supernatural paradigms. But it seems that all types of societies from the past, the ones we have now and the ones we imagine in the future, have these three paradigms. Because in this one as well, there is a government with elites, like the emperox. And there's a church, and then there's the one that is related to commerce, trade, economics, but not in a fair way, because all these things are not designed in a fair way as a way to motivate the people primates to partake in a system that is the best they can come up with at their levels of maturity, to have stability over time so that something better comes along, except it never does. It hasn't in our history, and it doesn't seem to do in this history. So this is a lesson in critical thinking. I really enjoyed, John, your pages from 17 to 27 when you described the journey of an 8-year-old boy to become a high-level bishop in the church there. And it's very realistic in the sense of the psychology that creates such phenomenons as a motivator. And what really dominates again is lending to a stability, and then people, even within each different of these three paradigms, they will ridicule not just others but their own paradigms when the stability is at least perceived to be there, of these systems that are really inhuman. Although they consider themselves human in the past, we consider ourselves human now, and in the future they consider themselves human. But there is such a flaw related to critical thinking and using the higher functions of our brain without cognitive dissonance, that after all the time up to now, the modern world, is the cognitive dissonance has dominated so much over past subhuman proto-societies that have functioned the same way as the one that also gives us the illusion of long-term stability now. So when I was 9, I saw a UFO that I still can't explain, Now, I could have already been on a different path of not having the same value for the pursuit of intelligence that I think came more from my grandfather. And I could have allowed this phenomenon to grow in a sense that would chart the course of my life, my own psychohistory. Because this happened during the day, it was seen by others. People the other kids that were playing, rackets of tennis with the ball against the school when it was closed. I don't know if it was a weekend, I think. And, but the thing is even then I was just curious, right? I wanted answers. But I didn't accept answers that were wrong too quickly, right? The concept of making assumptions. And of course, as time passed, I realized, I had the 9-year-old wisdom that I had then. And, I could have gone a different way like adults today do, and they think, when I was that age, I was young, I didn't take it seriously, but now I see, oh my God, I had a vision, or I saw extraterrestrials, or whatever it was, when really it proves my own theory that they're devolving their ability to use the higher function of their brain. Because maybe when they were young they believed it, but they didn't create an entire life out of it, or worldview out of it, or conspiracies out of it. So, in a way, you can tell that we are losing our ability to use the higher functions of our brain, and that critical thinking is just a myth at this time, such as humanism, which states we are capable of solving our own problems. I'm just going to press pause here for a minute. Okay, well, it was just a guy right next to me, and it's not something that I wanted to keep saying this subject without knowing who that person is. Didn't move after a minute that I turned it off, so I moved somewhere else. This is what it looks like today. So, what was it with me that actually made me at 9 years old, not pursue a path where seeing this flying saucer would have been a guiding aspect of my life, right? And I stated again that my grandfather, in a way, introduced, without necessarily speaking those words, the concept of critical thinking, challenging things, coming up with alternative explanations for them. And also, I don't know if he did this, I can't remember a lot of the specifics of our conversations, but also that some responses or answers to things must be probabilities, and they must stand for now, right? You can't make it a certainty. So maybe I had abilities already, and maybe they were linked to my grandfather or not, where that experience didn't become a certainty which guided my life. And to this day, I mean, my growing wisdom just led to more probabilities of it was probably more this, as I understand more the laws of physics, the natural world, and even the social systems that I belong to, which, would have explained whether things were in the news or not, whether other kids that saw this talked about it or not. It wasn't an isolated part of a town, so a lot of people saw it on that day. And I could, if I wanted, find some old newspapers, if I remember which summer it was, and see what it was. And it may just have been a balloon that was pulled by a plane, because it was kind of right after a plane, then there was other planes, and it was probably related to, just a fun thing to do, or an advertisement for thing, although I didn't see any letters on this disc, which was kind of the shape of a hockey puck, let's say. And it had little square windows all around, that's what I remember. But what made it that I didn't jump to conclusions, that I kind of became very, very curious, and sometimes even forgot about that in my life. And when I think about it again, just come up with other scenarios, and I'm satisfied with the concept of probabilities. At this point on the list of probabilities, this is what the more likely answer is, this is what the more likely answer is, this is what the more likely answer is, and it would change as I grew wisdom or understanding of the laws of physics, for example, and the laws of sociology or psychology. So for me, can you imagine that starting at that age, I would already have been very different than the norm and kept growing those skill sets? And can you imagine that today, what it looks like to me, that even the most famous TED Talk speakers would seem, developmentally disabled to me in a way that, this is the limit of what was your conclusion with this phenomenon. And it's sad, but it's also sad that it's very rare. I meet people who actually take on the concept of probabilities in multiple answers for a phenomenon, and can also accept that, hey, this is not something I need to do right now. Go and look up old newspapers to see which one is right or wrong. But some people develop these obsessions with this, or these certainties, and when these certainties are challenged over time, they become aggressive people, they become more irrational people, and they become also just people that are less and less able to use their brains with a human potential. So again, this is an example of I'm in search of the elusive Homo sapien, where let's say I'm sitting next to somebody at a coffee shop that may have an Homo sapien operating system, and we observe something that is fairly rare, and let's say we observe it a fraction of a second apart, which would make it even more fascinating when we turn our gaze and attention when we hear a sound and something manifests, let's say with a pedestrian in a car, and it's something that's very rare, let's say. Let's say the person that got hit by a car moved in a way that shouldn't have moved this way when the body was propelled in the air, let's say by the vehicle, and we are very close together seeing this, so the angle is very different, but let's say the timing of a fraction of a second is also different of when we turn our attention there. Now, the conversation that would flow, let's say we already see help coming and we're far away and there's nothing we can do, and we discuss the events, is in a conversation like this, which has kind of a hard-to-explain phenomenon among two people that don't jump to conclusions, I would maybe in one conversation say this person has passed all preliminary tests for being an Homo sapien. And then, of course, the person would be happy with the conversation as well, and then they would, arrange to spend more time together, whether it's male or female. We'd be pretty excited about meeting each other. So then, over time, we would be able to tell, okay, this person is consistent. It wasn't just a fluke, that conversation, where our abilities to think critically and be linked to reality in doing so, and being able to discuss it with a focus and attention that is worthy of this sized brain and all the connections that it's possible for it to have, that'd be a pretty exciting day for me. So it'd be like imagine you winning a $10 billion lottery ticket. That'd be kind of the same thing for me.